Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Geneva and welcome online. Mishtuara Clinton, Tavin Bachtale, Dachudive, Bari Borsik, Amen Shai Keras, Karabakimus, Kika, Ando Yekitaminatia. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Welcome. We're very happy to host you here in Geneva. Welcome to this meeting of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, together with a number of partners. We are very glad to have with us, first of all, the partner Chachipen Project, which is an umbrella also including other organizations, including FAJIC, who's here in the room, the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture, Dikanabister, which is a Holocaust Memorial initiative, Roma Holocaust Memorial Initiative, as well as the Ergo Network, the European Roma Grassroots Organizations Network. In addition, we have with us people from Roma in the Americas initiatives that we have been supporting, both in North America and Latin America. And we have, we're very honored to have with us today 3 special rapporteurs, including the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Truth, Justice, Reparations, and Guarantees of Non-Recurrence, as well as later in the morning, the Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues, and we hope the Special Rapporteur on Racism, although we're still ironing out time differences because she is in Los Angeles. I would say some very brief words about the concept of this meeting, and then I would do some brief housekeeping, and then I will turn it over to the first panel. The concept brings together several things. We have been working with, I think, a movement of people, primarily in Europe, although also outside Europe, to strengthen truth and reconciliation about the harms and continuing legacies of anti-Gypsyism. That included a 2015 report by the UN Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues, the former Special Rapporteur, which for the first time looked at the problem of anti-Gypsyism worldwide. And it also included a number of initiatives that were run in the framework of the European Union, led by former member of the European Parliament, Soraya Post, together with our office, including a major event in the European Parliament in 2019. So we have been trying to move forward in recognition of this particular form of racism and its continuing harms today, and thinking about how to move forward, rectify, remedy, and provide public knowledge of and the historical record of these harms and their continuing legacy. That's on one channel. On another channel, the Special Rapporteur himself has been working on strengthening the idea of memorialization within the mandate of the Special Rapporteur. And he was on mission in the former Yugoslavia earlier this year and has been working broadly on trying to advance within the mandate the idea of memorialization. He will himself say more words on so the idea of the meeting is to bring together those 2 strands, to try and also to help us move further towards developing this work outside the framework of Europe. There's a huge amount going on, and as we'll throughout the day, a lot has been done by civil society, by government inside Europe, and there are new things, and we hope to foster them in Latin America, in North America, in Turkey, and hopefully beyond. So our global mandate is trying to also move these things into the wider space of the world. So that's the idea of the meeting. The agenda broadly goes, we have a first panel which talks the concept, memorialization, anti-Gypsyism, and how does it fit together. Then we have 3 panels which are structured past, present, and its recognition, and future. That is broadly today. We're hosted by a partner, the World Council of Churches here in the Ecumenical Center. We're very grateful that they provided us space. And we hope this is only the first from our section of a partnership with this host institution. We are also, as you're aware, online. And with that, I would move into housekeeping. This is a safe space. Please be aware that it's going out live. So, you are speaking to the world. It will be in YouTube. I'm sure everyone will be respectful of each other, but I just remind that the rule is respect. Respect also includes, please keep to the time, and if the moderator starts telling you stop it, then please end or come to the end. Respect also means allowing everybody to have their space. The tech is a little complicated, as you will have already seen. We have Spanish and Romani interpretation in the Zoom channel. And if you need it and you're sitting in this room, plug into a device and a headphone and get it that way. The internet is having better access to interpretation than we are here. I'm sure coffee breaks are at 10:10 or thereabouts. The first one will be 10:15. Will be brought just out into the hall. The second one will be brought into the room in the afternoon. The lunch break is slightly long because some of us need to go down to UBS Bank and cash checks. And my colleague Federico will be meeting those people who need to go there to cash the checks. And we'll try to figure out how you can also eat while you're down there. So that we'll try to manage. I believe that's it for housekeeping, but I would just look to my colleagues in case there's something important.
Yeah, we are on Twitter also with hashtags, hashtag all in for minority rights, hashtag no anti-gypsism, and hashtag fight racism. That's about it. And also you can interact with the ChechPen handle, ChechPen EU. Super, great. And one of those hashtags is, this is the 30th anniversary of the UN Minorities Declaration, and we are doing that. On that note, I hand over to our first moderator, who is Rita Ishak, a former member of the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, former UN Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues, as noted, the author of our starting point. Rita.
Thank you, Claude, and welcome everybody online and in the room. And I just need to say a brief thank you really to the organizers for putting this meeting together, because I think it's so timely. And when I was reading the concept note and just thinking about the title, which is Roma Memorialization, I also realized that how little we talk about this in that context, because we always talk about the historical exclusion of the Roma. And then we understand that there was slavery and forced sterilization and ethnic cleansing and forced settlement and forced assimilation, and the Holocaust happened. But we don't really acknowledge these past events in the context of truth and justice and memorialization. And I think it's really high time that we conceptualize it and we kind of figure out what do we do with it, because we can't just take it as we know that these things happen, so let's move on and let's be happy people. We suffered so much in the past, so let's just, try to get over it and then just build our future. But, we carry this intergenerationally with us. There are researches how mothers pass on trauma to children. And so I think we do need to face our past and figure out what to do with it. And the difficulty, of course, is the lack of actual memorialization projects and how the Roma culture was also oral and kept so little in writing. And oral history has such a big value, but then it's so difficult to work with it when years pass and decades pass and centuries pass. And so I think we need to look into what has stayed with us, what has remained, and how we can build on it. And also kind of just think about the future, like how we shape the collective fate and memory of the Roma, and what's our role in it. If we haven't done it in the past well, how do we do it in the future better? And so I am not here as a speaker because I know very little about this special element of the history and transitional justice and truth and reconciliation and all that. But I'm happy that we have experts such as the UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion of truth, justice, reparation, and the guarantees of non-recurrence. He comes from Argentina. He is a human rights lawyer and professor. He kindly agreed to do the presentation in English, although he was preparing for it in Spanish. So we thank him for the flexibility. He is an academic. He has a PhD on juridical sciences. I need my coffee. And a master's degree on international relations. He's been the special rapporteur in this role since 2018. He was also a treaty body member before. He was with the UN Human Rights Committee between 2009 and 2016. And maybe what I would mention here, apart from his many functions and honorary degrees, that he is actually also a litigator in the inter-American system. And I think it comes very handy for us that he has a practical legal background and knowledge. So with that, I pass him the floor, and please, I really appreciate that you will just draw the concept for us and help us how to shape the day and the conversations around Roma memorialization.
Sure, it's 8 minutes.
You have.
We have generosity.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And it's a privilege for me to be here. Sorry, I prepared my presentation in Spanish. I will speak in English, doing my best. Sorry for the interpreters. If I speak in English, it's an inhuman treatment in terms of human rights. But anyway, I try to do my best. It's a big pleasure for me being here and participating in this event, and nice souvenirs from the World Conference of Human Rights. I represented the ecumenical movement of human rights in Argentina, part of the World Council of Churches. And I feel solidarity with the Roma people, first of all. And that is because when I was member of a treaty body in my previous life, Human Rights Committee, I have seen how difficult it was, even for a treaty body, to address properly the problem of Roma. And I remember 2 cases in the committee. The first one is Ori against France. And the committee decided violation of freedom of movement of these people from the agent de voyage. But for me, the issue was discrimination. So the committee adopted the less serious violation, and I wrote a separate opinion on discrimination. And the second one was Georgopoulos against Greece, forced eviction in Patras against Roma people, with the violation of Article 14, that means right to justice. But the problem was also discrimination and economic, social, and cultural rights. So I again wrote a separate opinion about the link between civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights. And of course, when I received the invitation, I accepted very, 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 very happy. My new hat, I'm special rapporteur, it's a long title, promotion of truth, justice, reparations, warranties of non-recurrences, but it's transitional justice. That means my job is how to deal with the past, when we had serious and human rights violations in a transitional period. So I need a transition for acting as special rapporteur. But anyway, some tools of the transitional justice process could be useful for the situation you will address in this meeting. And I will try to give some ideas in that line. Oh. In 2020, I presented a report on memorialization. I work very hard in memorialization in Spain and the Ley de Memoria Democrática in Spain and in other places. And I noted that memorialization was a little bit invisible in the mandate, because warranties of non-recurrences is too broad. Or you have institutional reform, constitutional reform, training officers, vetting process. So where is memory? So I identified memory as a fifth pillar of a transitional justice process. And that is because it's fundamental for the establishment of a rule of law, a real democratic order. We can't say we have democracy if we have discrimination, permanent discrimination against any group, collective, or people. And it is clear that the Roma situation shows impunity, denial, and current discrimination. So no addressing in a proper manner the past abuses disclosed in current discrimination. I'm coming from the human rights movement. I was president of Amnesty International in Argentina, and for us, accountability was fundamental. But being a special rapporteur, I note that memory is exactly important like accountability. In fact, you have 5 pillars: truth, justice, reparations, warranties of non-recurrences, and memorialization. If the state failed in one, the process failed. And it's not political willing. Legal obligations. Legal obligations. In terms of human rights, you have the obligation to respect and the obligation to protect. And in the second one, the obligation of warranty, the state should adopt all policy in terms of guarantee the human rights for all individuals and for all groups. So I'm coming from the former Yugoslavia. I've been there in December. Accountability was more or less good. We can't say in the former Yugoslavia we have impunity. You have the former tribunal, but now the situation is really complicated. I will speak on that tomorrow in the council when I present my report. What failed? Memory. Memory. So memorialization has different tools. I repeat, it's a legal obligation for states, a legal obligation for a real democratic order. And you have different types: museums, exhibitions, and education in memory. That means in schools. So we need to work very close with the different areas of the state in terms of establish public policy on memory, and with the Ministry of Education of all states to educate in the problem of discrimination and the abuses of the past for the non-repetition and for stop the current discrimination, because we have a continuous violation of human rights of the Roma people. You can see my report is in the website, and I think it's 9 minutes. I think it's right.
Thank you so much, Fabian, for sharing all these very important first and very thought-provoking thoughts with us. And I also would like to thank you for making a difference between the community memorialization and the state's responsibility. Because of course, Roma have been doing fine arts, paintings, songs, like our songs are remembering, the sufferings for centuries. So Roma have been trying to keep the memory through their own means. And if you think about memorialization in a wide context, of course, community meetings, healing, spiritual gatherings, they all are part of, the memory and how we pass on what happened. But what is important that you said about the accountability and impunity and denial from the state? So what are the states and governments doing to really face the past? And I think in my experience, as you said, many governments are in pure denial. They just don't want to talk about it. They say, we don't know enough, it's too tricky, we don't have written, even the Holocaust, you know how it was always questioned because we don't have written records of the Roma victims. And so I really feel that this time that we address this also from this formal recognition point of view by the government. So thank you for stressing it. And I'm happy that you are with us until what time? The first panel. You will stay for this panel so that we can, the participants can ask questions to you after the two speakers that I still have on the list. So now it's the next panelist is Soraya. We just talked about it yesterday. We met 20 years ago.
Yes.
In 2002. And we just talked about the Vienna meeting that brought us together and how many of us stayed with the movement and in the movement in one way or another. And Soraya has been very critical to have the Roma movement at the European level. As you all know, she was a member of the European Parliament between 2014 and 2019, representing Sweden. She's a member of the Feminist Initiative and part of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. At the moment, she's a civil servant, which I understand she really enjoys in the city of Gothenburg. She does some important work in sensitization and training, and she is still busy, and I know that she will. She's also grandmother and great-grandmother, and she has been doing this with all her heart. So it's really a pleasure to welcome Soraya with us, and we are listening to you eagerly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a little matter of order, because apparently microphone was not catching the sound in the room that much. Could I kindly ask Ismail and Soraya to sit next to Rika?
I can also shift, so because they speak more, let me go there. Ismail, come here.
You can use,
I think you should come. So if you answer questions, you will.
Okay.
So learning in progress with this hybrid meetings, festival. Just come to this correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I am very happy to be here to join with all of you. And I'm also very happy that you managed to join us, because I think it is very important that somebody in position to make changes or to push or recommend for changes is in strongly need for the moment. Yes, I have been an activist for about 45 years. But I would say that I have been facing anti-gypsies since my day of birth. Yeah. and is still continuing. And I must say that now, yes, now during this political climate that we are finding ourselves in Europe, but also across the world, I would say, it's really scary. And to be an excluded group, to belong to a group who about 1,000 years have been excluded, discriminated, gassed, forced sterilized, forced evicted. And also, like in my country in Sweden, we were also forced not to stay in a neighborhood more than 3 weeks, and until 65. And also until 65, we were also not allowed to enter the schools. So during my time as an activist, I have tried to push to give the name, the title, or to give a definition of what is anti-gypsies. Because like 20 years ago, when we spoke about this, everybody spoke about discrimination and the social part of being a Roma. So we were a social problem in Europe. I remember the first conference as Mr. Soros' Open Society did in Budapest. I think it was 2002 or 3. Anyhow, the headline was Roma, social problem of Europe. And I became very frustrated. So I think I was one of the only one who were very frustrated. So when I did the interview, I said, this is stupid. I thought they were intelligent people doing this conference, and they are prime ministers, they are everything, and they don't know more than this. So I started to try to have a recognition on anti-gypsies, together with friends, other activists, of course. So when I entered the European Parliament, it was for me strategic important to have a clear strategy, how to do the work. And the most important to start with was to have the recognition of anti-gypsies. And so we did. And it was also important to have a recognition of the 2nd of August as a Memorial Day for Roma victims of Holocaust. Now I am fighting for to have the right for Roma victims to, when they mention it, it is important that it is in connection to Holocaust and not genocide or folkmord or whatever. Because there are forces who doesn't want Roma victims to be included in the title, terminology of Holocaust. And this is in this modern time, this is really very cruel and disgusting. Yes, disgusting. I'm very sorry because mainly I might be very tough in my language because that's how I learned. Sorry for that. But anyhow, it is so super important. And I have been thinking and thinking and thinking what to do. It doesn't matter how many funds, how many whatever projects, conferences. I mean, they spend so much money on talking on discrimination of Roma. Everybody knows that, but nobody talks what to do. Okay, so they try to do, and then they will do like a first aid solution. We cannot heal with first aid on 7 centuries of anti-gypsies. We have to do surgery, yeah? So we have to do, we have to have memorialization, yes? We have to remember. I think we Roma do remember. We have because there is a mistrust between Roma and majority. And it doesn't matter if you're a blonde or dark Roma, if you're rich or poor, if you're disabled, whatever, it's enough. And for me, I think it's not very high level of smartness or to be godjaver, salbeschulpe, godjaver. Clever. It's not a high level to be clever. It's about will, if you want to face the dark history or not. And if you face the dark history, it has to touch your conscience. It has to touch your heart in collaboration with your brain to really act. And because that is one way to create trust. If they, I say they, I don't like this, but if the state show clever and real intention to do something about it, I am ready to reach out my hand and to forgive. But they have to ask for forgiveness because they are the perpetrators. I didn't do anything wrong. I just was born in the wrong group or in the right group. So this is the most important. There is no need for all these, all these plans. They have all these projects, blah, blah. I don't like it anymore. I have been doing this for so many years, and I see that we're still on the same tables, the same people, and we are just discussing the same issues all the time. So that's why this one is so important, because this is, except for the first time when we spoke about it when I was in the European Parliament. Then we really thought, okay, truth and reconciliation is for the state's good, it's for our good. This is something that benefits all of us. Because a healthy society cannot live with this. And we can absolutely not call ourselves as a democratic society. Oh, can I have my drink? Thank you. So, for me personally, I'm not very interested only to make a better life for Roma. I am interested to make a better life for the whole of society. Because if the society is healthy, we can all have and grow with with what is expecting from us and what we are capable to do. But for the moment, even though I have the competence or capability or being clever, I cannot proceed in life. I cannot step to the different levels. I have noticed that because some people, some colleagues, non-Roma, oh, you're so good, Soraya, you're so good. But when I get too good, who do you think you are? Go down a little bit. So this is the fact, yes? And we have to make a change because I feel impunity. Yeah? No, not impunity. What was the other word you said? Responsibility. Accountability. I have that towards the whole society. And I must say that I am so proud that I finally left, how to say, I'm proud that I finally left the view of me from the others, that I am a victim. First of all, I am a victim. All Roma are victims. But I started to say, I will show them, this is my country, this is my world, this is my society. And I have capability to do something, to make changes. Even though they don't want to allow me, I will do it anyhow. And I think this is important, but still I don't trust. I don't trust. And I want to trust. And I know my children, my grandchildren, they want to trust and they want to be trusted. Because we have to face a new future together, whether we like it or not. And So the most important now is to create trust between us, and we can only do that if we face the dark history together, deal with it, and in togetherness create a better future for all of us, by policies, by whatever, a museum, whatever. But a truth and reconciliation process without measure, or an excuse without measure, is nothing. I don't need that. So thank you. I think I was done. Yeah.
You know what, that was so beautiful, because I think it also triggered our thinking around more, as you said, consciousness and hearts and minds, and how we feel a sense of community when others want to look at us as the different ones, but we want to belong, and we would like to have that social cohesion and that build a community with others. And I heard you when you said that we are a victim, but then we don't want to be a victim. We are survivors, right?
Yeah.
Like for all these centuries, we have survived despite the odds. And I think, as you said, what we need is really also recognition, just facing the truth by the governments. Because if you think about First Nations, Indigenous peoples, or Black people and slavery, there has been such courageous statements by state leaders on apologies and just acknowledging the past. But if you think about it, how many world leaders apologized for the Roma and what happened to the Roma? We have a few examples in our concept, not Norway, Germany, Colombia, but Argentina also. But I think that we do have to push, because as you said, for our hearts, for the reconciliation, for the trust to build, this is where we need to start from. And I think we all heard you when you said that we need the surgery and not first aid. And I think that that's something that we take away from your speech. Thank you, Soraya. And now I have another panelist on the list, who is Ismael Cortez, who is also very important for us in Europe. He is an MP, a member of the Spanish Parliament. He also is a PhD in international studies of peace and conflicts. And what is interesting about Ismael, besides many things, that he also worked on combating anti-Semitism and other forms of intolerance at the OSCE. And he also just published a book on dreams and shadows on the Gitanos, the presence of an historical racism. So we are really looking forward to listening to you and about that history and how you view that. And of course, our future in that context. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me to come here. I also want to thank you, the Chachipen team, for the piece of research that have done in the last 1.5 years. Also, I'm very glad to share this panel with Mr. Salvioli. I was following his work long before you enter as a special rapporteur, and it is a pleasure to share the table with Soraya. Soraya was a kind of teacher for many of the activists that we were working around here in Brussels. And what I'm trying to do now is to translate in Spain what we did with her in Brussels. So thank you, Soraya, for all the work and commitment. And I took some of the main points that Mr. Salvioli and Soraya made before my word. And I want to focus on two things. One is memorialization. Second is trust. If I learn something from Soraya, is how to breach trust among antagonist societies. And then the issue of memorialization, and I fully agree with Mr. Salvioli. There are at least three dimensions. Dimension is a memorial, let's say, monuments, museums, exhibitions, textbooks. The issue of education, of course, but there is a previous step that is research and archiving. And this is what was missing in Spain. So the process of truth making and the process of trust making. And this is one of the key issues on memory and justice, I would say. I would focus on the final goal of reconciliation. To me, this is the main objective of the process of memory and truth. So since the Second World War, and especially the Holocaust, politics of memory, it was a democratic duty in Europe. And the recognition of the victims, first of all, then the recognition of the truth, reparations. So how to establish guarantees of no recurrence, and finally, and most important to me, reconciliation. The Nuremberg judgment was the trials, Nuremberg trials was a very important step, one of the most important, and afterward will condition the typology of genocide and crimes against humanity, and even the constitution of the International Court, yeah, in 1998. So the responsible of the Holocaust were judged in the Nuremberg trials. It was also a public communication through media. So I would say these are the two major phenomena of those times, but also it was a fundamental step for the reconciliation of Europe and denazification of Germany and therefore Europe. Without the Nuremberg trials, reunification of Germany and denazification of Germany and Europe wouldn't happen. But there is a deficit in the Nuremberg trials, is that Roma victims were not compensated, were not taken as victims. Yeah. So, and we have to wait so long after in order to be recognized by the German government, and then in 2015 by the European Parliament. So that's why now it's time to redress historical memory. Then also the case of South Africa, I think it was another paradigmatic example for the reconstruction of memory and justice and transitional justice concretely. Of course, the issue of amnesty for the different parts was an important issue for the reconciliation of the country and also to build the new South Africa, yeah, in terms of bridging trust among antagonist communities, but also how to reconcile a conflictive society. But also most important is how to build a change of mentality. So there are also some deficits in South Africa, I would say. That is, first, there is no visible change of mentality in the wider society. Yeah, so the capillarity of changing mentality in the South Africa was not fulfilled. And then also the issue of how to see the transformation in the country in economic terms. Yeah, so the concentration of capital in the hands of those who were perpetrating crimes still is going on. So also the issue of memory, it has to be linked to justice in material and concrete terms, not only in the ideological process of truth making. So beyond the case of South Africa and the case of Germany, that I think are the most important worldwide, I want to talk about the case of Spain. Recently, Mr. Salvioli talked about, we processed a law in July on democratic memory in Spain. And this law is focused on Francoism, yeah, on the period of Franco-fascist dictatorship. 1939 until 1975, and even the period earlier, that is the Civil War, 1936, 1939. And many different groups were targeted by violence, political violence, based on religious beliefs, trade unions, for example, ideological beliefs, but also based on sexuality and in the case of the Roma, on ethnicity. And all these groups are part of this law as protected groups that must be compensated and also somehow recognized in society in a wide sense. So concretely, with Roma, what happened already in the Second Republic in 1933, it was a specific law targeting Roma as nomadic people that broke the pre-assumption of innocence. So they can put you in jail at least for 5 years without any proof, just the word of the police. And this was enforced until 1978. Now, how to address the different episodes of persecution and police brutality during this time is something that we make a specific article in this democratic memory law in Spain that is going to be processed through the Gitano State Council, the Roma State Council in Spain. So what is clear by now is that there is one subject that is going to process the whole issue of memory and reconciliation, which is the Gitano State Council. There is a concrete period of time. There is the period of the Franco dictatorship, but still there are some issues on methodology that I would say are a challenge for the process of truth-making. The first of all is what are the cases, paradigmatic cases that are going to be considered. The second, how they are going to compile all the data, the collection or the data production is something that has to be built in terms of methodology. Then what are going to be the guarantees of trust of the whole scientific process of truth making? That was something that precisely in the former Yugoslavia was put into, many people was doubting about, because many political debates were around the process. So that's why now there are many problems. So the issue of methodology is not a simple one. Then the role of experts, and this is linked to the issue of objectivity and trustability of the whole process of truth making, and the role of civil society, of course, how civil society can embody the whole process of history, memory, and memorialization. And then I don't want to forget about the role of international institutions. That Salvioli was talking before about legal obligations, but how to enforce countries to fulfill and to accomplish with the law that they approve in the parliaments. That a big issue in terms of human rights obligation, and we are witnessing this in Europe, Poland, Hungary, and many other countries. And now I want to end underlying the issue of reconciliation. So how to reconcile a society? This was a big question, how to deal with the past to reconcile a society. Big question in Germany, big question in South Africa, big question now in Spain. I want to remember that already in 1938, the president of the Second Republic of Spain, Manuel Azaña, gave a speech in the City Council of Barcelona talking about peace, piety, and forgiveness. But international institutions were not ready to intervene in Spain and to provide a peace process. So now we are again in this point that Azaña made the discourse in 1938. Peace, piety, and forgiveness. But for that, we need the first issue of truth-making. Without truth and compensation, recognition of the victim, the Spanish society would be with different social antagonisms, I would say. Ideological, religious, in terms of sexuality, but also in terms of ethnicity. To end, I think the main challenge is how to measure impact after a process of memory, reconciliation, and historical justice. And again, I think that we have to see concrete results in terms of building a more tolerant society, bridging trust, as Soraya Paul said, before among antagonistic groups, and more important, to build inclusive spaces in terms of labor and economic, in terms of cultural life, and in terms of political life. If the apartheid continues after a process of historical memory and justice, we can say that in a way the process would fail. So I want to see a more tolerant and inclusive society in real, concrete and material terms with the Romani people in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ismail. And I particularly thank you for bringing up these elements that we also need to focus on, as you said, the missing research, material justice instead of just theoretical justice. Also, thank you for highlighting the processes in Spain and the truth-making and the essential elements of truth-making. And we are so happy that at least in Spain, we have a Gitano State Council. So there is a partner which can help with the process. And we know that we have you there. So we are looking forward to hearing how this is going on, and maybe we can learn and other nations can learn from this process as well. And since you started a bit late, I would take the liberty to extend this session until 10:20. And I would also suggest that because the special rapporteur needs to leave us, I would encourage you to have questions to him, because Ismail and Soraya are staying with us for the entire day. So maybe we can engage with them also at a later stage. So now it's really, the floor is yours online and in the room to ask the special rapporteur before he leaves. And so we have 20 minutes for our discussions. And I encourage you to raise hands. I think you can do it also in the Zoom, right? And then, yeah, I can see the chat box and you are also in the room. So who will go first?
Yeah.
Rita,
Yes.
we have a question from,
Okay.
I don't know if actually moderators can hear me. Roman Jews don't improve access to Roma to the justice and here is question from Genoveva Sortirova. And she says, Roman Jews don't improve access to the Roma to the justice. Having many Roma lawyers, I think, legal help should be improved, and this is her proposal. I mean,
Okay, okay, it's a comment.
yeah, it's more comment.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
I have a question to Mr. Salvioni. Thank you very much for your presentation. Having worked in Kosovo, actually just after the war, it was 2007, 2009. My feeling was when I went there that the post-war map does not recognize the role of minorities during the conflict, like in a sense of what was created afterwards. And I found very interesting what you said about transition, because it was like this map, like also really the map, you know, of the country did not recognize places of people who were being displaced, or even try to build up a memory of what was Kosovo before the war. It was focusing on main conflict partners, and Roma, because it was a big population there, does not exist anymore. So I wonder whether you can say something, how was your kind of, you know, what was your impression now when you went there? I found it always very sad, and I remember I tried to dig and to talk to people, but it was like really an absence. And it's quite interesting on the topic what we talk here today, because listening to you, I reflected what was the post-war societies, what was happening after 45, and I think there's quite a pattern, a similar pattern, that this absence doesn't matter, it's more than denial.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Then let's collect a few.
Yes, sure.
Are you okay with it? Please go ahead.
Como tal, le quería preguntar al señor Salvioli qué cree que se puede hacer para poder operativizar la problemática del futuro y los reconocimientos de los derechos de los gitanos en el mundo. ¿Cómo podríamos hacer más efectiva nuestra consulta y cómo podríamos hacer operativo el trabajo que hacemos las ONG del mundo y cómo podemos tener canales directos de acceso a todo el sistema de Naciones Unidas? Yo creo que sería importante que podamos acceder rápidamente para poder estar efectivamente en el territorio con la problemática. Gracias.
Aline, can you please summarize that?
Sí, voy a preguntar en español también. Sí, porque no hay muchos trabajos sobre memoria, verdad y justicia e interseccionalidad. Por
In
ejemplo,
English, can you tell us the question?
Damian's question in English.
Can you summarize this question in English to the room?
okay, okay.
Sorry.
No, I can't, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Maybe
wait.
then.
Oh, anyway, in your answer, we will.
I can translate
Can you?
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So how to operationalize the human rights framework to the Roma in the communities to solve concrete problems, yeah, and in institutional terms, yeah, how to create a channel through institution, through the Roma communities.
Okay, thank you.
Roma communities establish their contact with international.
Exactly.
Community, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any more questions?
I have a question. Thank you very much for all your thoughts. Is this true that although memorialization is very important and for all the reasons that you raised, in the case of the Roma people, equally important are judicial methods of transitional justice, because Yugoslavia, the examples you have first court trials,
Yes.
and then you come as a complement, because they are not addressing all the goals of transitional justice. You complement court trials with memorialization. Or in the case of the Roma people, we don't have the court trials here, yeah? So jumping directly or exclusively to memorialization would kind of limit the range of transitional justice that could be applied to bring benefits of truth, justice, reconciliation, repetition, guarantees of non-repetition and everything.
Thank you. Do we have somebody online before?
Because she wanted to ask a question as well. I can translate. She's gonna ask that question in Spanish for.
Okay, go ahead. Thanks, Lola.
Just, sure. Dime la pregunta de la traduzco,
Sí,
¿sí?
gracias. Mi pregunta también es un complemento de las otras preguntas porque estamos poniendo el tema de los romas, pero también me gustaría hablar un poquito más de la interseccionalidad de manera más amplia y también incluir la cuestión de género y otras cuestiones también que pueden empezar, porque acompaño mucho el tema de memoria, verdad y justicia, el trabajo que están haciendo en Argentina, que es fantástico, pero hasta ahora yo veo que solo juzgaron e introdujeron un caso sobre indígenas en Argentina, pero después todas las otras minorías no son mencionadas, los gitanos no son mencionados, los afrodescendientes tampoco. Y por lo que sé, también ese trabajo de memoria, verdad y justicia solamente en Colombia y en España, gracias al señor Ismael Cortés, que está aquí, muchas gracias, los Roma fueron incluidos, ¿no? Entonces, nosotros necesitamos realmente tu apoyo para incluir nosotros los romas y también tener un punto de vista más interseccional en esos procesos nacionales, incluir también otras minorías, género y el pueblo LGBT más también. Muchas gracias.
Okay.
So do I have to get closer to the?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so the question in a nutshell is how to introduce intersectionality in truth and truth making and, you know, the reconciliation processes. Because she's mentioning some examples in Colombia and in Argentina where Roma, they are not taken into consideration, you know, in Colombia as well, while Afro-descendants they are. So she would like to know how to introduce this concept of intersection.
En Colombia sí fueron
En Colombia sí.
ahora, hace muy poco. Roma,
Yeah, sorry. Sí,
pero en Argentina no.
Okay, I'm adding because I worked in Colombia, so I know the process yet. So Roma were at a later stage included.
Okay, thank you. And then there is one online question, and then I will leave you because it's so challenging. I had a question which in summary is about how do we make sure that the people who are selected by big projects to lead memorialization are trusted partners of the Roma community and not selected by international organizations that we may not have trust in. But this, now it's all up to you what you can address, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for all comments. And all comments and questions are linked. So we need to start from the beginning. And the beginning is, it is impossible to establish memory process without truth. Yes. You need previews. In the former Yugoslavia, we have not truth commission, and that is the problem, because we have just trials, and trials is part of truth. A truth commission is broader. So my advice, my suggestion is try to lobby for establishing a truth commission. And linked with the final intervention, the intervention by Zoom. So in a transitional justice process, there are two cross-cutting issues. One of them is victim-centered approach. And that means victims are not passive. So the victim participation during the whole process, from the design to the implementation, is fundamental. So you need expert people in the truth commissions. You need, of course, the voice of the victims in the memorial process, memory process. Because if not, you re-victimize the victim. And that is not acceptable. And you need people from the community participating in all institutions. And I would like to say something about intersectionality, because, well, the transitional justice process is not exactly the same now than in the beginning of the transitional justice mechanisms. So you highlighted the example of South Africa. It was a very good example, but for that time, today it's not possible because amnesties are not allowed. You can see my last report last year on the accountability. But anyway, the truth commissions was really interesting in South Africa. So the problem is impunity, but the truth commission was very good. But the first truth commissions in Chile or South Africa or others, they were focused on serious human rights violations and were very rude in terms of legal approach, in terms of psychological approach, in terms of social approach. Now, intersectionality, I think, is a key point for all new truth commissions. And that is why the Colombian commission, because it's a new body. So now you have people specialized in gender, for instance, in all new truth commissions. In the CONADEP in Argentina in the 80s, no gender approach. So it's a progress. It's a progress. And finally, to the question addressed by my dear colleague from Argentina. Well, we need to be strategic. So now I'm becoming an NGO. So my advice is to try to push the Human Rights Council to establish a particular special rapporteur on Roma issues.
Yes.
But that is not magic. So you need to push, convince, to try to speak with the like-minded and to put it on the table. That's one. And the second one is if you present cases to the treaty bodies, try to focus on discrimination. Because if not, treaty bodies could escape. The third one is to use other mechanisms. Shadows report to the reporting process in the treaty bodies. So not always we receive in the committees enough inputs.
Yeah.
Well,
Especially from Roma.
yeah, exactly.
I really miss the Roma NGOs. Like they were never in the room, right? Do you have the same?
Sure, exactly. So you did. So that's a really key point. And the last one is to use all special procedures, because I don't know, but the working group on arbitrary detention do not receive many cases of Roma people. And Roma people suffer arbitrary detentions all the time. So you need to put their mechanisms. So the issue is how to use them, that mechanisms. And of course, my mandate. So, as I said, I work in a transition period, because if not, I will be the High Commissioner. So I am truth, justice, reparation, guarantees on non-recurrence, but in an exit of an armed conflict or a transit from a dictatorship or an authoritarian regime to the democracy. But anyway, you can have my advice for using some tools of the transitional justice mechanism without speaking on transition. Well, that's all my advice.
Oh, thank you so much. I think you give us so many practical
Yes, very good.
ideas for future advocacy and lobby. And I also really want to thank you for your partnership here, because I think that we are starting the discussion thanks to, of course, our committed colleagues here. But we hope that it will lead to further action and some concrete, also as Ismail said, we need concrete outcomes. We need to measure our success. So let's hope that this is a first step and we can continue with you and your mandate. And with that, I think we need to have the coffee break. I'm sorry I did so poorly. I really need my coffee, but it was such a pleasure. And I really thank for all our speakers and panelists for this morning. I think we got so many thoughts now that we really have a good flow for the day to just continue building on what you had said this morning. So thank you very much to all of you.